it's just looking back at it now, it's almost seems silly how bad that situation was handled by the refs. And I do think, like, and I've said this a million times, refereeing, umpiring, everything that has to, officiating, thankless job. It is 100% a thankless job. Nobody thanks them. The best refs in the world, best umpires in the world, best officials in the world, the best ones, you don't notice. You don't know their name, but you don't talk about them. They're just there and they do their job. That's what they're supposed to be. That's a tough thing to do. When you look at guys like Angel Hernandez in Major League Baseball who try to make the show about himself, that's when you're not doing your job. And I don't think these officials were trying to do that. I think these officials probably, and this is just a conspiracy that I have, I imagine somebody told them something and was like, please overturn this call. I have a hard time believing you wait 20 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it was, and then miraculously come to the decision that, oh, yeah, we made the wrong decision.
Mr. Mo shares my opinion on what happened. I don't think anyone talked to the refs. I just don't. And because I think if we open the door that refs are talking to other people throughout the game that we don't know about the communication, then our sport's just rigged from the start. I don't know. But Mr. Mo says during a 20-minute delay, he doesn't think they reviewed it, but they saw it on the Jumbotron and realized it was such a bad call and decided to wave it off after talking to each other. I think that's what happened. That's exactly where I lean. I think once you're standing there for 10 minutes, you just look up at a replay, and obviously in Texas, after an interception when you're down, what was it, like 25-8 or 23-8 or something like that, to try to get back into the game, you get inside the 10-yard line, you have a chance to make it a real winnable game at that point. When you have time to play it on the Jumbotron, I assume they were just looping it with a call that bad on the play that big. And I assume the refs just saw it and realized it was a bad call and waved it off, which you cannot do. You just can't do it.
I know the game ended up being, 30 to – what was the final on that one? Either way, it was
by 2 scores.
It was a multiple possession. It was 30-15 was the final. But I've always said this about officiating. I do my best to never blame officiating in anything, even if the officiating is bad, mainly because I do feel like when there are close games and we blame officiating for an outcome, I always like to say, well, why is it that everyone on the field is allowed to not be perfect except the officials? The officials, and more so now with all the NIL money, especially with these big games, with all the NIL money, the officials, more times than not, they make less money than anybody that's pacing around on that field. They're making less money than everybody on that field, but we say the officials have to be perfect. All right, the NIL $1 million quarterbacks, they could throw interceptions. You could throw 3 if you're Carson Beck over there. If the quarterbacks, Quinn Ewers and Manning, they could both make mistakes for Texas. That's okay. Coaches can make mistakes with some of the calls and decisions made at certain points of the game, but officials have to be perfect. I don't stand with that. Officials are going to make mistakes, and I don't like when teams blame officials for results or outcomes of games, because you can go throughout the entire game and say, well, that interception lost you the game. That fumble lost you the game. That bad play call cost you the game. That kicker missing the kick, the easy extra point missed you the game. The missed field goal lost you the game. I never blame officials for outcomes of games. You can criticize officials. I just never say they lost because of that. Now, that's not what this was. The other part, too, is we've seen, 3 top 5 matchups already, 2 months into the season already. Like, there's been a lot of big-time games. And have you ever watched a blowout where you said the officiating's bad? No. We never say officiating. By the way, there's bad calls in blowouts, too. They just don't have as much – there's not as much magnitude on the result of the call like there is in close games. There's we always say, in these close games of this magnitude, you can't have that call made there, or you can't have bad officiating here. I'm like, I think that there are equally bad calls across all games, regardless of the level of importance of them or the magnitude of the situation. I just think that the moment makes the call, magnifies it more, and it makes us complain more. Bottom line is, I've never left a game and said, man, great game. And the officials, God, I got to get that official's jersey, dude. Like, that official was great tonight. I think that's the best official I've ever seen. No, we all hate officials. We blame officials for everything, when reality is, I don't think there's no such thing as good officiating, but there's no way it's always bad officiating. It's just officiating is always a talking point in close games. Same thing with the Ohio State-Oregon game. Jeremiah Smith, should that have been called offensive pass interference or not? This, that, and the other. Bottom line is that call's made all the time, good or bad, but because of the moment, because of the magnitude of the game and the magnitude of the moment, it was magnified even more, and we criticized it more. But, yeah, I try not to bash officials too much, but that was a weird scenario. It appeared as if they got bullied into making that reversal or call, whatever you want to say. But nonetheless, hey, look, we're out of time.
That's right, baby.
We're out of time. Hour 2 coming up next. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Ohio State, Nebraska, a noon kick coming up this Saturday. And Nebraska reeling a bit. They got their ass kicked by Indiana. They didn't just lose to Indiana. They got beat down by Indiana. Now they have to prepare for an Ohio State team that's coming off of a bye week and coming off of a loss against Oregon. Ohio State going to be a little angry. They're going to be a little angry. Nebraska could be looking at back-to-back behind whoopings, if you will. Also announced yesterday on the Buckeye front, of course, a week from Saturday, they'll have back-to-back big noon kickoffs. Big noon kickoff on Fox coming up on Saturday for Ohio State, Nebraska. But Ohio State and Penn State was just announced that that'll be a big noon kickoff as well. And a lot of Penn State fans are mad.
Oh, yeah.
Because, and I've said this before, a lot of the times that Ohio State has lost against Penn State, some of those have come at night with the whiteout and the atmosphere and the crowd. If I'm Penn State, I'm mad as well. I'm mad as well. You want that game under the lights. I hate the big noon kickoff. I love the fact from a marketing standpoint that Fox was smart enough to, hey, noon is not a primetime slot, but we're going to brand it as that. We're gonna say it over and over and over. We're gonna put it in the name of the pregame show. And we're gonna call it the Big Noon Kickoff pregame show. It's the Big Noon, primetime game of Ohio State and Penn State. And they're gonna call it primetime, but it's not primetime. Noon is not prime time. I hate that Ohio State, Penn State, a potential top 5 matchup, and it is going to be a top 5 matchup, assuming someone stubs their toe this weekend. It's a top 5 matchup, and it's going to be played at noon. I don't like that. I can't stand the big noon kickoff. I love their pregame panel. I don't think it's better than game days, but I love tuning in to listen to Urban and those guys. I think they do a great job. I love Joel Klatt. I love Gus Johnson. I love them on the call. I get why they did it, to compete against ESPN. They're not going to touch ESPN's primetime night slot. They don't want to go up against it, but they want to monopolize the noontime slot. Everyone tunes into that. I get why they did it. I don't care. I don't like it. Ohio State, Nebraska, I'm fine with the noon kick there, whatever. But Ohio State, Penn State should be played at night. Penn State fans have every right in the world to be upset because that should be a whiteout game. That should be under the lights. And that should give them the biggest home field advantage to go up against a top team like Ohio State. Not saying that that's what they need to win, but it definitely helps. And I don't think it's as big a home field advantage at noon for Penn State as what it would be under the lights at night.
Well, Penn State fans all very mad, and I guess that's fair. They haven't had a primetime whiteout game against a marquee opponent in a while. They continue to have to schedule them against other opponents, but I wonder if that's better for them.
For who?
Penn State. They stink in whiteouts.
Fair enough.
They stink.
Fair enough.
They're 11-8 in whiteouts since they started doing them. They haven't beat Ohio State or Michigan in a whiteout game in a long time. They only beat them in non-whiteout games. This is huge for Penn State. This gives them a chance. They can't win at whiteouts, not against good teams. So they should be happy. I don't know why the fans are so mad.
I like noon kickoffs in college football. I do. I think the 3:30 slate's by far the worst.
Yes.
And then I think the 3:30 slate's nonsense. I think the noon slate, like Ohio State and Michigan, wouldn't be Ohio State, Michigan if they didn't kick off at noon.